Welcome everyone to today's workshop, Simplified Performance Reviews. Before we get started, I just want to let everyone know we will be recording this session, so you'll be able to review it at your leisure once we get everything edited and put together. So this particular workshop is for supervisors. On Thursday, there will be a session for employees, so feel free to come back if you'd like, but that session will also be recorded. Today, you will be hearing from our friend, Christina McGuire from the OHR Leadership and Talent Development Team, as well as myself, Joy Wise Davis from CSE HR. We're going to just do a quick review of the overall process, and then we're going to focus on the actual performance review and kind of talk a little bit about some tips and tricks on putting that together and some things to just think about as you are putting together the performance review for your employees, and also some information that you can share with your employees. So why are we doing performance evaluations? We have been going through and are still going through a major pandemic. A lot of things are happening. You know, last thing on our minds, performance reviews, but you know, at the end of the day, we're still performing the mission of the university. We're still needing to provide our employees feedback. And one of the things on the engagement survey is, you know, employees want to know, how are they doing? They still want to be developed. And so being able to provide professional development opportunities, being able to provide recognition, being able to let people know where they stand in their roles. How do I get to the next role, whether that be this way or this way? Our employees still want to know how they're doing. And I think, you know, all in all, work still needs to get done. People still need to be trained. And so we still need to do that. And there are definitely ways in which we can provide feedback. There's a need to provide that feedback. And so that's our holistic, you know, need for performance reviews. Even though we're still in the process of determining whether or not there's going to be merit, irregardless of that, we still need to be able to have open dialogue with our employees, and still need to be able to make them feel like, hey, what you're doing matters, because I go back to, we're still performing the mission of the university. And so that is why we are doing performance evaluations even during a pandemic. Christina, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Joy, and good morning, and again, welcome. Happy Groundhog's Day to everyone. It's great to be back in the conversation to continue discussing and sharing about strategies for the simplified performance management process. And here on the slide is a visual recap of kind of where we have been along the way. And as Joy mentioned, we're going to do a quick reminder of the strategies, of the goals, the quality conversations to connect some dots. But the focus of the presentation today is going to be on the year and that performance review piece to kind of recap the year. And we're going to look at best practices on how to do that, how to prepare, write, and deliver the narrative as well. And then we're also going to take a quick spin or a preview of the form as well. Since CSE is moving to the PAT, we'll kind of look at some resources and the form, or what you might experience when you go to PAT. So process starts with goals. So we've been saying this and reviewing this for a while. And strategies for setting effective goals at the beginning of the year is that the goals, they should be simple. So they should be specific, important, and measurable. So it should be clear and shared expectations between the supervisor and the employee, what the employee should be working on to contribute and to be successful throughout the year. They should describe the what and the how. So again, the clear expectations and the behaviors they need to engage in order to perform well, be aligned with other goals or strategies within your department or team or college as a whole. They should be few and focused in number, so goals and say should be big so they have a meaningful impact. The idea is that you should only be able to accomplish a few meaningful things each year. It might be sub goals or milestones along the way, but the goals themselves should be big, meaningful goals. And then also flexible. So the goal should always be flexible as things change throughout the year. And this year, particularly different, particularly unique and challenging. So again, just making sure that the goals are flexed throughout the year. We're flexed throughout the year, and that might even mean pausing and coming back at a later time to accomplish goals given current resources or other priorities that might creep up. So once the goals are set, next are the ongoing check-ins. And these are conversations between the employee and the supervisor to discuss progress on the goals, provide feedback. Think about it as like relentless course correction. So along the way, making sure that the employee has the resources, has the support to stay on that track to be successful throughout the year. And once the goals are set, they essentially become the agenda for the ongoing check-in meetings. And that would be the focus areas to start with as far as providing feedback, letting the employee know how they're doing, any questions around that, and then using these check-in times to stay connected throughout the year. And best practices suggest that they should be at least 15 minutes a quarter with employees to check in. Maybe more is needed, but at least that 15 minutes every quarter. And this is the recap of the strategy. So if you have reviewed this information or joined us for the previous workshops, this should somewhat look familiar to you. There's a quick guide available for more reference and details if that would be helpful. But the strategies are to set up the conversation for success. So first establishing those roles and responsibilities for both the supervisor, what your role and responsibility is, and then also what the employee needs to bring to the conversation. And then when you have the conversations, it's talking about the goals, updating them, providing that progress and feedback around them. And then that last step there is the who does what by when. So between that check-in time and the next one, what is the employee expected to do, or what are some milestones along the way that they should be striving for? So simplified approach is new. We've been implementing it, I think, for over the past year now via Zoom. And while you may have had really good intentions to set goals, to start the conversations with employees, obviously this year was very unique. It brought a lot of different challenges, a constant change. So if the goals weren't set, if they weren't updated, if you didn't have, you may have had really good intentions, but you just couldn't quite get to the check-ins with each employee throughout the year based on those strategies, that's okay. The process is designed to be cyclical. So it is really about doing the best that you can and starting where you are at. So I like to think goals, check-ins, they don't necessarily know what month it is. So wherever you're at, it's about getting started, understanding what is realistic and practical for you, for your employees, for your team, and starting from that point going forward. To kind of recap, between now and the end of the year, and then just to set yourself up for the next year as well. So performance evaluations, final step in the process, in the performance management process. And I just wanted to pause to hear from everybody joining us today that when you hear performance evaluation, kind of what comes to mind, or what do you think of, as we approach this cycle end or the performance evaluations season, if you will. So feel free to throw some thoughts in the chat or unmute and share as well, either way. Kind of what comes to mind when you think of performance evaluations? Lots of work. Thank you for that comment in the chat. Yes, they can be burdensome. Merit increases, yet there's those connections to merit increases as well. So there's that tight association that can exist. Yep, some stress that might come in with maybe the conversations, the amount of work that comes with them. So a lot of things may come to mind based on your previous experiences with performance evaluations. And one of the goals is we've tried to say throughout this whole simplified process is really hoping that this experience, as you approach this new this process for the first time of the year end, hopefully you find it a lot simpler than you have in previous years and more meaningful as well. So the performance evaluation, just kind of at a broad glance at what it is, it's really managing the performance throughout the year. So when you do get to this end, hopefully it is not as stressful as you've experienced in years past. And it's really just a recap of everything that has been going on throughout the year. So you're having the goals at the beginning, the ongoing conversations, capturing notes throughout, and then writing that performance review at the end of the year. Now, given that it's a new process, given the challenges of this year, it might be a little bit different, but hopefully it only gets easier from here on, and that you feel that you have a good handle and confidence in managing performance as well. So what about the form? We like to say, and I'm sure you've heard it before if you joined us for workshops, that performance management is not about the form. It's more about the behaviors that you engage along with your employees throughout the year. And that's where performance management happens during the year, not just at that one time at the end of the year. However, we're going to do a quick spin through and quick preview for the form because it's still important to know about the changes that have happened over the past year. It has been simplified with the intention of making the experience a lot easier for you, your employees, and more meaningful as well. So again, this is just another quick shout out. The driving progress toward important goals and priorities is the purpose of performance management, and it's not filling out the form. But about the form, so a quick commercial break about the form. So this year, it is the performance appraisal tool, new to CSE. The form is now electronic and part of the tool. This tool has existed, I think, for over a decade. I know some of you may have had more experience if you've ever worked in the med school realm of things at the university. It was developed by what was the AHC, the Academic Health Center, now Health Sciences, a while ago. This past summer, we worked with the business owners of this tool in order to transition it over to Office of Human Resources in order to retrofit it so it reflects the process that we've been going. So as we have been doing the workshops through CSE throughout the year, the system is now aligned to support the processes that we've been talking about throughout the year. And now that it is coordinated through the Office of Human Resources, it is available to all colleges and units across the university. Not everyone has adopted it yet. It's still a local leadership decision, but it is more widely available now. So more and more people are using it as well. So when you enter the performance appraisal tool or the PAT, this is the employee landing page, and I apologize. I realize it might be a little bit blurry on your screen when I did the screenshot for it. But when they enter the landing page, there's two options there. You'll see at the bottom in the blue. Number one is goals, and number two is the performance evaluation. And the goals, that is where they can place their goals at any time throughout the year. They can maintain the goals, update the goals, and maybe you've had some time to go in and explore yourself to see how those functions work. It's pretty straightforward. Put your goals and a due date. The second piece is the performance evaluation, and this also doubles as an employee input form, and we'll talk more about that here in a moment. From the supervisor view, if you enter the performance appraisal tool as the supervisor, logging in as that, this is the landing page that you would come to. And again, very similar to the employee view. The one additional thing it has there at the bottom is 3, the overall rating. So there's that option as well. There is no self-rating on the employee side of things. This one also, or the 3-point rating scale, I should say, it was also simplified. So it went from a 5 to a 3, and the 3 levels are requires improvement, meets expectations, and exceeds expectations. And we'll talk more about the rating and ways to communicate that and provide additional information in the few slides or later to come. So when you click on the performance evaluation, so that number 2 option that you saw on the landing page, and as I mentioned before, it also doubles as an employee input page. This provides the option, it's a narrative now, so it's just 2 boxes for the employee to provide input, and then for you on your, from the supervisor standpoint, to write the narrative about the what and the how. So it's the results that the employee accomplished throughout the year and how they accomplished it as well. And then there are also resources on the performance management site. So it is the resources in order to kind of get spun up and learn the performance appraisal tool. They are all on-demand resources. So it's videos and quick guides that you can view from an employee or a supervisor standpoint to understand the system. And the site is through OHR, so it's through OHR landing pages. And I know we will share resources and links and stuff like that after the workshop or the information that Joy sends out. So moving into the write and delivery, so the strategies to actually write and deliver the performance review. Before we move on to these strategies though, any questions about the tool itself or the performance appraisal tool, the PAT? Okay, hearing none, seeing none in the chat, I will continue on. But if something does come to mind, oh, there is a question, is there a place for supervisors to keep notes? Yes, so throughout the year, that performance appraisal, that number 2 option that we saw on the landing page, it is shared with employees and supervisors throughout the year. I should say the employee view is shared with the supervisor throughout the year. When the supervisor goes in throughout the year, they'll see the employee box, which is where the employee would enter information. And then there's a supervisory box, which only the supervisor would have access to. And we'll explain a little bit more in the few slides to come here, but essentially throughout the year it's shared. So the supervisor and the employee can see what the employee can see throughout the year. And at the end of the year, it's separated and then it gets routed. So the employee closes out before the supervisor sees it. And then the supervisor then would route it back to the employee. Hope that answers your question.
So Christina, can I just clarify? So when it's shared, that means everybody can see everybody's notes. Both can see each other's notes when it's in the shared?
Supervisor and employee can see employees. Supervisors only can supervisors are the only ones that can see their own notes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And so throughout the year, as a supervisor goes into that number 2 option, there'll actually be 2 boxes under like the what and 2 boxes under the how. One would be the employee and one would be supervisor. So in the employee box, which the supervisor can view, that's what the employee and the supervisor can share. In the supervisor box, the employee cannot see.
Okay. Ever. Okay.
Yes, yep, until the very, very end when it gets delivered. Yes.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Yes. Yes, please, if any other questions come up, but we'll move forward with these strategies to writing and delivering. So the system, it's important. Hopefully you find it saves time, it's more efficient, it's valuable, but it's really just there to support the process of the behaviors, of the goal setting, of the ongoing conversations, and the narrative wrap up at the end as well. So the first piece is preparing, laying the groundwork so that you increase your chances of having an effective, productive conversation with employees at performance review time. So before we move forward, again, just want to hear from everyone on our in the workshop today. Unmute and share or throw it in the chat. What are some ways that you have, if you've done these in the past, what are some ways that you have prepared that you have found helpful, or maybe things that your supervisors have done for you that you have found really helpful in preparing? So tips or strategies to share with others that you have done. I've done it throughout the year. That's a really good strategy. Yep, to kind of keep, so at the end, it's just a recap. It's a really good strategy. Others, strategies for preparing for performance reviews that you found beneficial. Looking back on previous years, yeah, that's a really good place to start too. Sounds like kind of those 2 comments that were shared in chat, it's kind of keeping a track record throughout the year. So either doing it throughout the year, keeping notes, addressing issues in real time. So they don't just kind of pile up at the end of the year. That's a really good, good way to do it as well. So kudos notes to remind myself of areas done well. So again, both on what are things that they need to be doing better, but also ways to recognize them as well. Reviewing the position description. Absolutely. So being clear on the expectations that the role is needs to perform. So all really good strategies to do that. So keeping track throughout the year, so saving your time, kind of front loading your time spent on performance, keeping track of things in real time, and then reviewing the expectations. Another good strategy, and maybe this is something that you use too, keep the surprises to a minimum or out of the performance review time. So the picture here, surprises should go with birthdays, not performance management. So if you are preparing, writing, delivering, it's really being mindful about what you have shared with the employee throughout the year. The goal would be to have no surprises. Bad surprises can lead to unproductive conversations, and defensiveness can erupt into other problems. And hopefully you haven't experienced it before, but that's something definitely to avoid. If there is something that might be a surprise to the employee, that maybe the performance review time is the best place to address it. Just be sure to be thoughtful in your delivery, have objective reasons to support those comments and feedbacks, and to allow the employee some time to process as well. So the prepare piece, and this kind of echoes what we saw, some of the comments in chat, is the first step is start by asking the employee for the input. And I know sometimes supervisors do this. This may be new for other supervisors, but this is a best practice strategy. Asking for the employee to fill out or provide input around situations, actions, results, and impact, having them reflect on the situations. And that is where that number 2 option on that PAT system that we just looked at a moment ago is a place for them to do that. So they can do it throughout the year, and then they can recap and review it as well at the end of the year. That would then be routed to you. So have them think through the situations, and not only just what they did, but how that impacted those in which they work with, or that students, other peers, other departments, other colleges, whatever that may be. And again, they can use the employee input form to capture that information. The self-rating, as I mentioned before, sometimes it's tempted to ask them for that numerical value. It hasn't been shown to really be productive for conversations. Typically, they're inflated, which can lead to more defensiveness and bad feelings if the manager and the employee don't rate similarly, or the employee thinks rates themselves a lot higher than the manager would rate them. So it's not recommended to have them do that. So after asking the employee for input, it's also asking others for input. So another strategy. So it's considering, who works with your employee. It could be peers, key partners, your indirect reports, whoever they may be, students. They can provide important information about the employee's work and performance. In many cases, it might just be a simple conversation with the others that you would like input from, or you can send email, survey. I know a manager that I work with, one of her employees sends out a really, I think like a 2 or 3 item Qualtrics survey that she sends just to gather information a little bit more broadly. When receiving feedback from others, it's important to be thoughtful about that feedback and make sure that it is valid, relevant, useful to the context in which you've experienced the employee in. Keeping in mind too that everybody might just have kind of bits and pieces of it. So make sure that it fits with your own observations as well. So common performance raters. So as you prepare or review rater errors, as you prepare, it is important to be mindful that rater errors just often naturally creep up in performance reviews. And this isn't an exhaustive list of everything, but it's the most common ones that typically occur. So just a really quick spin through these 5 listed here on the slide. That first one, lack of differentiation. Sometimes if a rater lacks the confidence to defend the rating, they may rate everyone just the same to help the conversations be easier, even though the behavior itself differs drastically or widely between the employees. So the approach could take a form of leniency where everybody gets a really high rating, or severity where everybody gets a really low rating, or just a universal feeling that everybody's doing fine, so everybody gets the same rating. And it can be, it lacks clarity when everybody gets, if the behavior is different and everybody gets the same rating, it can lack clarity in, what performance should be rewarded, or what performance should change going forward. The recency effect is when managers aren't as diligent in continuously measuring performance, so they rely more on what happened more recently at the end of the performance cycle as they are preparing to write the performance, rather than keeping in mind the performance throughout the entire period. The halo and horns effect, it is when the employee is either highly competent or incompetent in a particular area, and all other areas are rated respectfully really high. So halo or really low, kind of that horns effect is what they call it, in all areas. Personal bias, or just another word, is favoritism. It's when managers allow personal feelings or impressions of employees to dominate the performance rating process. Inaccurate information or preparation, it's just when managers fail to take the time to really prepare and solicit relevant information about the employee's performance. So it may not be as accurate or as informative as it could be otherwise. And most of these rater errors, not all, but most, can be minimized by having the regular conversations throughout the year and taking notes, reviewing those position descriptions of some of the strategies that you shared in chat as well. But it's really anything to prevent just relying on your memory. So capturing things along the way, so that isn't like the sole source of information. The next piece is really thinking, once you've gathered the information, the input from the employee, input from others, starting to think through, what they did accomplish, how they did things, and the impact as well. And then it's also considering not only what they did, but thinking through how they achieved that. So based on what they provided, input that you yourself have seen, and input from others as well, thinking through how they performed throughout the year. So once you've prepared and once you've maybe kind of thought through the what and the how piece of things, it's sitting down and preparing and writing the performance evaluation. The first piece is the narrative. So thinking back to the form that we just went over, it's writing about the what, writing about the how, which also involves the impact of it. So taking the time to be thoughtful and specific when it comes to writing the narrative, it is going to be the most useful portion of the review for the employee. It also provides justification for the rating. It's important for the employee to understand how they're performing relative to their role and their expectations from their role as well. So a little bit more about writing on the what. It's important to, while it is important to review the job description when writing the narrative, it's important to write beyond just the job description. So it's not just a matter of reiterating the job description. It's more highlighting the key accomplishments that they did, the actions, how they did that, and the impact as well. So there's some questions on the slide there just to think through that might be helpful to write a broader or more meaningful narrative when it comes to describing the results of the actions they took, the difference that they did, how they accomplished it, problems or issues that it resolved going forward. Could be saving resources, being more efficient, etc. So that's the what piece. And then the other piece is writing about the how. So the skills, knowledge, abilities, or other characteristics that they need to perform well in order to be successful in their role. So it could also pertain to technical competencies that they needed to engage in specific to the job or the role that they have, or leadership competencies, so how they led the work, how they interacted with other people in order to be successful in accomplishing the work. So here is an example of what a narrative might look like, separated about the what and the how. So the what here is designing and implementing a new data collection process that improves the quality of data. So that might be what they did throughout the year. The goal that might be sitting behind this that might have been discussed or implemented earlier, it might be, design new data collection process in order to help lab or order to help team, and then to, collaborate with people, actively listen, collect information. So that's the what. And then the how. They, in this particular example, solicited input from others. They actively listened, going a little bit deeper on that active listening, describing a little bit more. So again, to give meaningful feedback to the employee. It could be just active listening could be described as that they summarized when they gathered information, they asked clarifying questions. When they brought team meetings together, they didn't interrupt. And then the evaluation piece, thinking through how well they did that. Did they do it consistently? Did they do it effectively? Did they only do it some of the time? Was it only around certain people that they were really good at active listening, and other times maybe they weren't? So thinking through all of those pieces of it, kind of what they did, how they did, some details about that, and then evaluating it based on effectiveness and consistency. The next example here, I will turn it over to Joy to walk through another example around this.
Be helpful to come off of mute. So we're going to talk about Luis, a research support manager. And we're looking at the competencies of building relationships and aligning resources. And so the what, Luis was assisting the PI in a submission of a $1 million grant to support the research agenda of the lab. Luis's organization of the data allowed for an on-time submission of the grant. So the what, what are we looking for Luis to do? And then the how. Luis's relationships with other lab members and colleagues has improved since the last review. To achieve this, he proactively requested, collected, and prepared data for the grant submission, built relationships with the lab team by responding to emails in a timely fashion, maintaining transparency in shared projects, consistently delivered a weekly progress report, and arrived at meetings with prepared notes, data, and questions. And that's the how you went through that. And, you can talk about, how consistently he did that, how on time he did that, and just, how well. And then, of course, the ultimate, what would be, did they get the grant? Not only just on time, the final piece could be, did they get it? And now it may not happen that quickly, but these are the right things. And so one of the things I talk to managers about a lot is that the how is very important. I know we like to focus on the what, but the how is just as important, because if you are accomplishing something, but you're ripping apart the department, you're ripping apart the team, that needs to be measured just as much as the goal that you're trying to achieve. Because if you're sowing mistrust or just tearing everybody down to get to the goal, that's not okay as well. And I think that some managers have a hard time with that, because they're just looking at the what. They're like, well, we did it. We accomplished what we needed to, but look at what's happened in the wake of that. How is everybody left? Are they demoralized or not? If everyone's feeling good about it and we did this together as a team, there's something to be said for that. So I just say, just keep in mind the what and the how when you are talking with your employees and when you're rating them as well. Questions, comments? Okay.
Yeah. If anything do come up, please let us know. And just to reiterate what Joyce said too, it is agreeing on not just the what, but that what can sometimes be accomplished in many different ways. So it is that additional conversation to include the how, so there's shared understanding. And it's clear to the employees, what is helpful to the situation, and other things too that can be detrimental to that situation or team as well. So the next step, moving on to continuing the strategies for writing a performance review. So after writing the narrative, it is about providing the rating, which is a justification, the narrative being the justification for the rating. And when providing the rating, it's important to evaluate the employee against their own role and against their own job expectations, and how they accomplish that, and not comparing across jobs, or some jobs are more complex just by nature of the job. By nature of that, they might have a broader impact across the team, college, or university, or even the field in which the research or the work is being done in, versus other jobs. So making sure that the job is evaluated within the expectations of the job and not comparing across jobs. Also, it's important to keep in mind what we talked about a moment ago, the consistency piece as well. So thinking through, is the employee, are they consistently doing the what and the how, or are they only doing it at moments in time? So that might kind of feed into different ratings as well. And again, writing the narrative will help make it clear why they received the rating in which they did. So the rating scale, as we mentioned before, it was simplified from what had been a 5-point scale to a 3-point scale. Research has shown that unless there is meaningful differentiation, having a more complex rating scale doesn't just introduces complexity. It doesn't make for a better, more meaningful process or provide many benefits. So the 3-point scale is an opportunity to normalize that meets expectation message that most employees that work hard, deliver results will fit in that meet expectations category. Another way to think about it would be like the bell curve. So most people are in that middle point, and very few you would hope would be on the low end, and then, but at the same time, very few would be at the high end that are really going beyond and above consistently to exceed the expectations. And this will also be shared in the employee workshop as well. So they will have heard it, from this delivery or from this workshop as well, but important to reiterate when you do have a conversation as well. So inflation temptation, it can be tempting to, give out the flurry of exceeds expectations or rate someone really higher than their performance reviewed. We're all working hard. We're all dealing with changes. We're all, working toward the mission. And sometimes it's a way to avoid conflict with those more difficult conversations at the end of the year if you have to provide a low rating and to justify that as well. What are some, to reflect on the question here, what are some disadvantages to giving an inflated rating to employees? Thoughts about that? Again, unmute and share, throw it in chat. We'd love to hear from you. Or is anybody kind of misplaced expectations and perceptions? Yes, thank you for adding that in the chat. Yep. So if you inflate the rating, and it's not accurately reflected of their performance, they might have different expectations, perceptions about the work, about their behavior. They might not be open to feedback because they think they're already doing well. Doesn't leave room for growth. That is absolutely true. So while it may be difficult at times, giving employees good feedback that reflects their performance does allow them the opportunity to grow and develop in ways that, again, support the performance as well. It's also another way to think about it. If you inflate ratings, it might be unfair to those that aren't within that inflated group. So it is not providing honest feedback and kind of maybe not recognizing those that really truly did deserve that higher rating by placing everybody in that same category. So this next slide, I'm going to turn it back over to Joy to talk a little bit about the new ratings, the meets and the exceeds.
All righty. So as everybody knows, we are going to be going through a pretty big change here because we are used to having 5 ratings: the outstanding, the exceeds, meets, requires improvement, and unsatisfactory. So I'm sure there will be dialogue around this going from 5 to 3. But as Christina mentioned, having the 5 does not necessarily mean a better process, does not necessarily mean that it's the right thing to do. And I think what this is going to do for us is really get to the point that most people are meeting expectations, and that is exactly what we want. That's exactly what we expect. And that's exactly the message that we want to be providing. So what is exceeds? It is more than being excellent at the job. And it's not about effort, improvement, or workload or type of work. It's consistency. consistently making significant contributions beyond the outlined responsibilities. So it's not just in that one expectation, or I'm sorry, that one project, you knocked it out of the park, or those, that project at the beginning of the year and that project at the end of the year, you were great. It was every day you went above and beyond. You took the initiative to perform at the next level consistently. And as a supervisor, you would clone this person, and having them mentor another employee, that can be a little misleading, because we may have, our meets expectations folks mentor another employee, but this exceeds expectation person, you're having them mentor because you've got somebody that is, on the precipice of being promoted, being, you may put them on a committee, they're ready to go. And I think many of you have probably heard me say, it can be a promotion this way, or it can be a promotion that way. But this person who's exceeding is going above and beyond consistently, not just every once in a while. And I think that's the message that you want to get through to your fellow supervisors, and helping some of our folks to understand, and also to employees as well. And as Christina mentioned, we will be talking about this in the employee workshop as well, so that they will hear it in from more than one source. And one of the things to remember is, do employees know that they're exceeding expectations? Supervisors have the obligation to tell them that, to say, what, you are doing this consistently. I consider you somebody that's exceeding expectations. And if they don't know, how are you going to start letting them know? How will they do that? Because if they know, then they can continue doing it. Reward them for the behavior that you're seeing from them. And then base the evaluation on the expectations of the position, and not necessarily based on someone else. Because if you're like, well, so-and-so is doing this, I want you to be like this, that may not necessarily be their job. That may not necessarily be their style. It's really about what is happening with their job description, their roles and responsibilities, and how are they performing to those. So it's important to really lay out for them, what does meets expectations mean? Because you know what, that's what I expect. And that is wonderful. That is the way we want it to be. And then here's what exceeds looks like, and if that's what you're going for, here's what I need to see from you. And be open and honest, and let folks know what that looks like, so that they can, if that's what they want to strive for, then definitely support them in doing that. But we recognize this is going to be a big change, but we believe it's simplified, absolutely, going from 5 to 3. And I think that folks will appreciate it in the long run. But I think the takeaway is meeting expectations is exactly what we want to do, and it's exactly what we support, and we think that's a great job. So there's going to be a resource that we will talk about at the end, which is called Performance Evaluation Guidelines in 2020, in 2020-21, that is going to just give ideas on things to talk about, being that we've been in COVID for the last almost a year now, and the fact that everybody has been working hard and everyone's been doing different things on just kind of how to approach this review that's coming up, and not taking away from anybody, but just talking about how have you, maybe they have exceeded in certain things, but that does not mean that they've exceeded for the entire year, but you don't want to take away from the hard work that they've done. So there's definitely a difference there, recognizing that, but then also helping your employees get through that piece as well. Questions, comments? I think I saw one pop up in the chat.
Yeah, the question in the chat is there one numerical rating, or does each goal get a rating? And there's just one. There's one rating in the PAT system for everything. So it's really looking at the kind of compilation or the performance holistically to provide the rating and not doing it goal by goal. Did I capture that, Joy? Anything to add to that?
Nope, that was a great question.
It was a great question. So just to emphasize what Joy said, it's really about the dialogue, and the rating should just be reflective of that. But the performance is managed beyond just that one numerical rating that you're assigning at the end of the year. So the final piece, before we get to some resources that we wanted to share, is the delivery piece of it. And here just some, again, there's a quick guide to this, so there's some more details behind all of these bullet points that you can refer to. But before the meeting, you can share the written review, so they have some time to reflect on it rather than seeing it during the meeting at the first time. You can make sure you set up time and the technology ahead of time, so that time in which you are meeting with your employee is dedicated to them, giving them your full time and attention to go over this important piece of feedback for them about their performance. Best practices for during the meeting, it's explaining the process, the context, providing the narrative to them, the rating as well, how that was connected to the narrative, and allowing time for, again, the dialogue piece, so questions, answers as well. This, again, when it comes to the rating, might be helpful to kind of make just a statement to level set across all employees. And again, while it is a change, it's a change for everybody. So it's not like some are on the 5-point scale still and some are on the 3. So it impacts everybody the same way from that point of view. That you might just want to say that the meets expectations is where most people will fall, and that maybe only 10 to 20% receive that exceeds. So another way to think about it, if it's helpful, thinking about that meets expectations as an A letter grade. So everybody's doing a really good job meeting. That's where you want people to be, and that exceeds might be that A plus that fewer people would receive. During the review, if there are challenges or surprises that come up that may not have been anticipated, these are just some places to get started from, or to kind of jump to if something occurs in the moment. It's showing the empathy. If something does happen to surprise the employee that you didn't anticipate, giving them time to process, depending on the reaction, maybe it's pausing and coming back to the conversation at a later time. And then also focusing on the future. So if you are delivering performance feedback to them that may not be as positive as they anticipate, or that that they can do, it's really giving them honest feedback, but focusing on that development aspect, like, hey, at this point in time, you may not be exactly where you need to be, but how do we move forward on this, and how, give them the resources and the feedback in order to develop through assignments or through, continued ongoing conversations or more frequent ongoing conversations. And there's a guide on the LTD website to refer to as well. So our recap slide here, as you can see across the top there, 1 through 6 are just the steps in order to successfully prepare, write, and deliver the performance evaluations. Before we go into some next steps, share some dates and some resources, just wanted to pause to throw out there any other questions you may have, any challenges that you anticipate, or any tips or insights that you might want to share with others in the workshop today. So just what else in general can we answer for you at this point? I see in the chat it says our team is exhausted. Hopefully that yes means you feel that the simplified approach is going to be helpful and less exhausting than it has been in previous years. And that's a point too. It's really about keeping it simple, making sure the employees get the feedback that they need to recap the year, as Joy mentioned earlier, to motivate them that everybody has been, doing their best to work toward the mission given the year, and then what can we do going forward. Yes, that this still is important to do that.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh,
go ahead. Nope, all yours.
I was gonna say, yeah, people are scared. It's a tense time right now. And I think that's kind of the feeling of everybody at this point. I don't have any answers on that. I think it's just how we are at this particular point. I wish I had answers, but yeah, I think we all are in this tense space right now without a lot of answers. When merit pay is a possibility again, will the overall rating be tied to merit pay? That's a great question, Catherine. We have not heard anything about that. I'm going to say this is just me. I'm assuming it will be, but nothing has been said to that effect at all. As a matter of fact, I don't even know where we stand with merit at this point. So again, we're kind of all in this wait and see pattern, but I don't know.
Great questions. Is there a curve to climb to get the... Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this is a really good, it's kind of change and change and change. I think this year, in the midst of everything and implementing this, not realizing how many challenges would pop up throughout the year. The tool, it's based on the research and designed around the best practices. So while it's a change this year, I always like to say, hopefully you find it simplified, more meaningful, and that hopefully this will be the last change. I can't say that, to guarantee, but because it's based on the best practices, in doing so, we really hope to kind of minimize that churn of kind of the latest and greatest each performance evaluation year. So again, there might be a little bit of a learning curve this year to get everybody on board, but hopefully that is something that just gets easier in the years to come. I see some questions about dates. I'm going to flip to this slide and turn it over to Joy to share the dates and the next steps and additional reminders.
Okay. Thanks, Lindsay, for answering Catherine's question on that. So during the remainder of the performance management cycle, what we're asking is just for you to talk to your fellow supervisors and colleagues about, what you heard today, exploring the resources, which is on the supervisory development and performance management site. And this year's review cycle, as was placed in the chat, March 1st, 2020 through February 28th, 2021. And then, reviews are due by 8 a.m. on May 3rd, 2021. So we wanted to push the date out as far as we could. And I recognize that for P&A employees, there's still a narrative to be done. The narratives are still being done by some. I also want to just put a plug in that the PAT, can accommodate narratives. So I certainly wouldn't create battles where battles don't need to be created. But I just wanted to throw that out there that it is something that can be captured in PAT. We have been told by OHR that it can, reviews can be kept in PAT as a part of the employee file. So it's a situation where if you want to avoid having to send us the reviews to be uploaded, you're having to upload into the Google Doc folder that you have done in the past, you absolutely can have the narrative actually put into PAT, and that can be where everything stays. And then that'll just kind of save you a step because you're inputting everything into PAT and it can remain in PAT. So I just wanted to call that out, that PAT can actually be used for P&A, but as you know, not required. It's required for civil service, and we're strongly encouraging, obviously, labor represented, but certainly can be used for P&A. And I believe some folks out there have their own postdoc form, but again, it could be used if you don't have a form, could be used for postdocs. It's a very versatile tool in that manner, but the most important thing is that May 3rd, 2021 is when everything should be due and completed. And for PAT folks, that means everything through all stages on that May 3rd. Questions, comments on that?
Awesome. Well, just in the last couple minutes here, we'll just kind of flip through the resources. And again, I think Joy had planned to send these all out if you haven't received them already, but just to make some connections about what to look for. This one, the performance management side, is where all things specifically related to performance management. If you were to go to this site, there's also a link on the left-hand side that will take you directly to the performance appraisal tool, where it has the videos, the quick guides, and also where you can log in either as an employee or as a supervisor. So it's kind of your one-stop shop for performance management. In addition, we have the supervising.umn.edu. So this, for those of you that may have poked around or maybe experienced some of the resources there, it's broader than performance management. So there might be additional things there that you find helpful to support you. The performance management quick guides and stuff are on that site as well. So where there are connections, you'll see them reflected on both sites. I should also say too, on the performance management side on the left-hand menu, under the performance evaluation specifically, there is what Joy had referred to as the guidance for 2021, I believe it is. So some additional thoughts and considerations as you wrap up this particular year. There's also a PDF guide of questions that you might find helpful to bring into the performance conversations as well. There was a question that came in: if an employee has not set up their goals or started their part of PAT, can a supervisor start the PAT form for that employee? Technically, yes. I would think it would be good if they have their goals when maybe they just haven't got them in PAT yet. I would encourage the employee to log in and kind of poke around and familiarize themselves with it, and they can add their goals at any time as well. Hopefully, obviously, before the end of the year, and then any due dates associated with that. And that would be the employee logging in, selecting number 1 goals, and then that would be the space there for them to add the description of the goal title, and the due date. So I see we are at time. Is there anything else to add, Joy, or any other questions that you might have? I did see something about an email prompt that gets sent to employees to fill out their goals. I'm not, Joy, do you know how?
There isn't an email prompt for goals, but once the review is initiated, there will be email prompts after that. That will say, your review has been initiated. And then I believe the next one, and Lindsay, correct me if I'm wrong, it'll say your supervisor has, I don't know the exact verbiage, but it'll be sending mass emails as the review is moving through various stages. Thanks, Rhonda.
Yeah, thanks. Awesome. Well, again, I see we are a minute past our time here. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today to familiarize yourself and to learn more about the performance review process, writing reviews, delivering reviews, and please feel free to reach out if you have any questions about the resources. Obviously, I put you in the direction of Joy first, but you can always reach out to myself about any of the OHR or LT resources that you might have additional questions about. So again, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.